The Arctic, a vast, forbidding wilderness. It seems steadfast and ageless, but it's fragile, rapidly changing, just as we're beginning to unravel its mysteries. At the mouth of Canada's longest river, life flourishes in a network of channels and islands. Creatures flock to the light in a seasonal blaze of sunshine. As spring arrives, the frozen tundra yields to lush meadows where prehistoric creatures graze. In winter, only the toughest remain. But times are changing. Temperatures are rising, and habitats are crumbling. Life on the Delta must adapt or die. This is a voyage of discovery through the changing world of the Mackenzie Delta. On the far northwest coast of Canada, the country's longest river, the Mackenzie, flows into the frigid Beaufort Sea. This vast fan of water and neighboring islands encompass a rich biodiversity. The Mackenzie Delta is the largest pristine delta in North America. It shifts from the boreal forests circling the Arctic, beyond the tree line, to the open tundra. Here we find islands that formed in unusual ways. The land lies on an immense underbelly of permafrost. The waters nurture diverse little creatures that tell the story of a changing Arctic. Summer migration brings home millions of birds, fish, and mammals. Humans come here too. They gather at a summer meeting place on an uninhabited speck of land west of the Mackenzie Delta. This is Herschel Island. Herschel has only existed since the last ice age. 30,000 years ago, an edge of the advancing Laurentide ice sheet thrust up sediment to form the island. Herschel Island's ecosystem has been created by extreme swings between the seasons. From brutal winter cold in the -50s to the bustling activity of a brief summer when temperatures can be tropical. Wildlife scurries to make the most of this fleeting opportunity. The land animal that knows this best has traveled furthest: the caribou. Some come from the woods of the Yukon, through forest and over mountains, where the beat of their hooves over 26,000 years has worn tracks in the rock. They're returning to their calving grounds. A few make an hour's swim to Herschel Island. A calf can be born and on the move within hours, keeping pace with the adults. The herd's survival depends on calves living past their first week, when they have a better chance of outrunning a predator. The caribou share this land with some of their kin: reindeer. This is Canada's only herd. They were brought from Alaska in the 1930s, when caribou had dwindled here and local people faced famine. The herd now lives in this region year-round, moving across the tundra, searching for lichen, leaves, and grasses to eat, all the while looking out for predators such as wolves or grizzly bears. The preservation of Herschel and its wildlife are a priority to the local Inuit. Senior Park Ranger Richard Gordon spends his summer monitoring the island's animals.
Kikakdaruk is the Inuit name for Herschel Island, meaning our island. And Herschel Island, as a territorial park, means that everyone has a responsibility in taking care of it for future generations.
More than 100 species of birds from all over North and South America converge on Herschel Island. These sandhill cranes flew from Mexico, a 3-month journey. They've navigated by their inner compass, geographic memory, the sun, and the stars. They've learned from older members of the flock and are driven by an urge to return to their birthplace. Their arrival begins by aggressively staking out territory, reclaiming their birthright on Herschel Island. The sandhill are monogamous for life, forging their bond by singing loudly in unison and dancing in harmony. This pair could be together for 20 years. She will lay 2 or 3 eggs, and the chicks will call from inside before they hatch. The parents' devotion persists in their offspring. The family will stay together for the next migration back south, and the one after, when they fly back to Herschel Island. For over 800 years, the Inuit of the Western Arctic have come to Herschel Island to hunt caribou and fish for herring and char.
Heavy, full, don't let hard. Look at this one. Oh, look. Oh, you're at the end of that thing, it will kick off.
Robert Archie has come here every year since he was 3.
Beautiful.
It would be a precarious existence if the community always relied on the bounty of the sea or land. Archie's people have found a way to preserve a good harvest, to tide them over when pickings become slim. Behind this door is an ingenious excavation. Below the topsoil is earth that stays frozen solid through summer. Permafrost. So to store fish and meat, the Inuit have carved out a communal fridge. The permafrost here is some of the world's deepest. It reaches 700 meters down. Only the top 60 centimeters of the ground thaw each summer. The tension between the surface warmth and the underlying permafrost has created fascinating land formations. Beautifully symmetric patterns are formed on the surface by the repeated freezing and thawing of the soil. The most impressive permafrost land formation can be found a 4-hour boat ride east of Herschel on Richards Island. It can be seen from far away. A pingo, the Inuit word for this type of hill, which has a core of ice. This pingo is called Aklisuktuk, which means growing fast. As far as pingos go, this one's young, 200 years old. Tall as an apartment building, rising 31 meters above the tundra. This pingo was formed when a tundra lake drained. As the water seeped away, the saturated lake bed was exposed to icy air and wind. The earth began freezing and expanding. With solid permafrost beneath, the ground buckled and had nowhere to go but up, creating the pingo. A pingo is often the same shape and size as the body of water from which it grew. This one became an island when water flooded back around it. Aklisuktuk is a landmark used by locals to navigate the channels. Nearby, around the corner from Richards Island, is a bay that offers a safe harbor. Every summer, Kugmallit Bay is the destination of one of the Arctic's great migrations. It's the gathering place of a special ocean mammal. Their high-pitched twitter heralds the arrival of the playful beluga, one of the smallest whales. Every year, over 5,000 are drawn to these shallow waters to breed. Belugas can reach the weight of a small SUV. Although they usually swim at a shallow depth, they've been reported to dive deeper than 800 meters. They're one of the few whales that can turn their heads and swim on their back. All the better to look up for openings in the ice. Unlike most whales, belugas don't have a stabilizing dorsal fin, which could be damaged by swimming close under the ice. They have a smaller dorsal ridge instead, and well-distributed blubber to make them both stable and nimble. Belugas are the only whales to shed their skin. They're probably attracted to Kugmallit Bay because there the salty Beaufort Sea mixes with the Mackenzie River's fresh water. This softer water helps the beluga shed and cleanse their skin of parasites as it rubs its body along the gravel riverbed. Females and their calves often travel in separate groups from the males. And the mothers swim further from Kugmallit Bay, at the delta's outer edge, into the estuary waters, seeking quiet spots to suckle their young. Here, teeming water sculpts the land. All of this was once Arctic Ocean. Over thousands of years, the surging Mackenzie River has deposited millions of tons of sediment. It created a massive delta with over 25,000 lakes and channels. This is the northern edge of North America's boreal forest. Larch and spruce trees struggle between the extremes of summer and winter. There's a thin layer of topsoil over permafrost, so their roots are fragile. Decomposition here takes years, providing sparse nutrients to the trees. The delta's warm microclimate allows these trees to grow further north than anywhere else in North America. The Mackenzie Delta is constantly in flux. Lakes and channels transform with the seasons. When the ice breaks in spring, water sweeps through, carving fresh paths. Microbiology holds secrets to the Arctic food web that scientists seek to uncover. Few species survive here, so each holds a crucial role. If one species dies, the results ripple far. Insects are key. Biologists Ryan Scott and Frankie Tallarico from York University conduct ongoing research in the Delta.
There you go. So that's a dragonfly larva. It's a pretty small one. They get to be a few centimeters long. This is a dragonfly in the genus Aeshna. It's a mature larva, so it's fairly close to hatching and becoming an adult dragonfly.
Dragonflies have been around for millions of years. They play a vital role in the Arctic food web. Without them, these meadows might be barren. No flowers, a lot less vegetation, fewer mammals, and no birds. This ecosystem functions like a clock. But the clock has been thrown off by climate change. These eider ducks flew here for spring a few weeks ago from Russia. Their ducklings have hatched. So have the dragonfly larvae, which are ducklings' favorite food, and contain about twice the protein of steak. In recent years, spring has arrived earlier and earlier. The warming temperatures mean larvae can hatch before the ducklings. The ducklings are then born too late for the nourishment they need. Many other shorebirds depend on this delicate food web, including these sandpipers. They feel their way into soil and muddy water for delicious invertebrates. The semi-palmated plover has sharp eyes to find larvae, worms, insects, and mollusks. Most of these flew from Texas to breed here. Both parents incubate the eggs. A chick can hatch and leave the nest within hours to feed itself. But the mother and father keep guard while it rushes to eat and grow before the long flight south, escaping winter. Not all Arctic creatures want to escape. Behold the wood frog. No other amphibian lives this far north in North America. Wood frogs hibernate by tucking into underbrush and withstanding temperatures way below freezing. The wood frog survives the Arctic winter with 2/3 of its body frozen. Its heart stops beating, and it can hold its breath for months. Its survival depends on a midsummer bug buffet. With this diet, the wood frog can fatten up in a few weeks and make it through 8 months of winter hibernation. It has withstood the test of time. Here in the Arctic, evolution selects those who learn to deal with winter. Beyond this solitary tree is tundra and a different ecosystem built on low-growth vegetation. The Mackenzie Delta's maze of lakes and channels challenges boat pilots. They can get lost, snagged on floating logs, or stuck on a sandbar. Jerry Cassoon is on a 3-day journey to Herschel Island, where his family has hunted for generations.
No civilization for a few days. We'll try not to get lost.
After a day and a half, Jerry successfully navigates through the delta's waters. Before tackling the Beaufort Sea, Jerry pit stops at a popular Inuit fishing ground, Shingle Point. At this time of year, there's an abundance of Cisco herring and Arctic char. These families want to catch enough fish during the brief summer to see them through winter. Char is a big player in the Arctic food web. Those that come here spend most of their lives in Yukon rivers. They come to the ocean in summer to feed on small fish and crustaceans. The char are eaten in turn by seals, polar bears, and humans. Those that survive swim back to Yukon rivers and spawn, starting the cycle again. The role of fish in the food web of this region has long interested scientists. Researcher Dana Newman is looking for signs of environmental change in these fish.
This is an Arctic Cisco. Well, what we're doing now, it's an Arctic coastal ecosystem study. A part of that is just looking at all the fish that are here, and we even take invertebrates and just looking at the food web and how everything kind of comes together, and that way you can tell who's eating who and how the food web is built.
It starts with the char's smallest prey, the mysid. These tiny crustaceans at the base of the food chain are first to show signs of a polluted ecosystem. High levels of mercury have been found in mysids in the Beaufort Sea. A remaining question is, how long will the fish that eat the mysids still be safe to eat? The long summer days are an opportunity for Inuit from remote villages to come together, exchange news, tell the latest jokes, and play games. After an evening with old friends at Shingle Point, Jerry must head off to Herschel Island while the weather is good. He faces a 2-hour trip across the cold waters of the Beaufort Sea. The Beaufort Sea is frozen most of the year. But over the last 30 years, it's been steadily warming. And there's more open water for longer. The sea ice is unpredictable, forever moving and changing. Much is new, but some has persisted for hundreds of years, moving with the currents of the Beaufort Sea. Finally, Jerry arrives at Pauline Cove on Herschel Island.
It's a beautiful feeling when you can make it to Herschel Island. Hey, welcome to Herschel Island. Kiki Jugger.
Jerry docks by a cluster of old buildings, remains of the late 1800s, when whalers came to the Beaufort Sea. 15 ships at a time filled this protected bay. Herschel Island's isolation was broken and its native culture disrupted. One whaler reported that the bowheads were as thick as bees. They almost wiped them out. They killed them to harvest oil for lamps and for baleen, the strong, flexible bristles in the whale's mouth that filter krill used to make women's corsets. But by the early 1900s, the market for these products had collapsed. The Arctic whaling industry ended. With stricter regulations since, the bowhead population in the Beaufort Sea is strong again. Today, an indigenous land claim agreement has returned Herschel Island to the Inuit. In midsummer, more than 200 species of plants burst into bloom on Herschel. There's cotton grass, ground shrubs, and wildflowers. The humid maritime climate fosters a lush growth of fireweed, chamomile, lousewort, forget-me-not, buttercup, and many others. Cottongrass thrives in boggy areas and by ponds and streams. It's the most widely flowering plant in the northern hemisphere. The fluffy pod releases seeds carried by the wind. Inuit use the fibers to insulate clothes and bedding and to start fires. And caribou love to eat cottongrass. Another caribou favorite is the castanea, commonly known as Indian paintbrush, which is edible for people too, and rich in the mineral selenium. The woolly lousewort is named after the hairy stem that insulates the growing flowers. They produce a sweet nectar, sucked from the base of the petals. The roots taste like young carrots. Lemmings live and die here with the plants. When the plants thrive, the lemmings thrive. And when the plants die, so do the lemmings. They live in underground colonies they excavate below the topsoil, which can extend for acres. When there's an abundance of food, they're quick to breed. This year, the lemmings and plants are flourishing throughout Herschel Island. This proliferation of plants is, however, a sign of unusual change. Scientists come from afar to study the vegetation here. Dr. Isla Myers-Smith has come from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. These are the gravestones of whalers buried over 100 years ago. Photographs taken over the years have inadvertently recorded the steady, increasing growth of surrounding shrubs.
As you can see on this branch here, they're growing each year. Around here, that's about 4 or 5 centimeters of growth just from this summer so far.
With warming temperatures, the shrubs have expanded all the way to the edge of the island. Here, there's more dramatic evidence of climate change. Erosion. Herschel Island is crumbling into the sea. Exposed permafrost on the island's edges is thawing. Temperatures are rising globally, and in the Arctic, it's almost twice as fast. The warming climate brings more violent storms. The lower edges of the cliff's permafrost are now exposed to the eroding power of thunderous waves. Every day, tons of soil slide into the sea. Herschel Island is in danger of vanishing. The noble peregrine falcon is rendered vulnerable. It likes to nest on cliffs, but its habitat here is falling away. This year, a pair has managed to find a perch on the cliff face to nest and raise its brood. But with the cliffs dissolving into the sea, how many more peregrine chicks will call Herschel home? The scars left by the thawing and sinking earth are traveling inland, a harbinger of impending collapse. The creature that has witnessed these profound changes most has been around since before the last ice age. It once roamed the Arctic with the saber-toothed cat and woolly mammoth, but survived the mass extinctions of 13,000 years ago. The muskox. Musk oxen grazed at the edge of the Great Laurentide ice sheet. But this is a different landscape and time. These two old bulls face a greater challenge to find food. A warming climate has created a paradox. The warmth forms a fog that covers the ground and freezes vegetation for more of the year. For now, they're content to cool off by the water. Not far up the bank, Other bulls are in rut. They're ready to mate. First, they want to fend off their rivals for the cows. To do this, they smear their forelegs and mark their trails with a secretion from glands by their eyes. This strongly scented musk gave the species its name. Then the bulls challenge each other to determine who's dominant. This display of strength and virility determines which the females might choose. This bull lost and can only wait until next year when he can try again. This prehistoric species has witnessed great changes in the region. These oil rigs, built in the 70s, were abandoned in the 80s and 90s after limited success and falling oil prices. But many companies are keen to try again. The Arctic is said to house 13% of the world's oil and 30% of its natural gas. And in a warmer Arctic, it could be easier to explore and drill. These waters are likely to face another invasion by those who want to extract the Arctic's hidden resources. The Inuit have lived here for almost 1,000 years. Over the last 150, they've felt many disruptions in their relationship with the land, the animals, and the sea. They still keep a deep connection with Herschel Island and the Mackenzie Delta. They remain skilled at preparing muktuk, a traditional food made from aged whale skin and blubber. They understand how to survive in the Arctic wilderness. With extreme changes in seasons, and know how to read the weather.
We are here today. There's a generation tomorrow, and their generation after that. We have to ensure that Herschel Island stays in that safe feeding grounds for the Arctic char, the herring, and the belugas. It holds a lot of history, and this history, as you walk along this beach, can be washed up in front of you by the moving waves and the currents.
The Arctic is an often hostile environment, but it is fragile too. The web of interdependence between species is finely balanced. Summer offers a brief opportunity for new life. As winter approaches, darkness descends. Caribou and birds can escape south for warmth. Others, such as muskoxen and wood frogs, must endure the ferocious elements and wait for the warming sun to return next spring.